new bill changing the rules of how Bitcoin miners would interact with the Texas power grid has unanimously passed in the state Senate. The bill, which is known as SB 1751, is looking to reduce incentives for Bitcoin miners to turn off their machines during peak power load by putting caps on those. Under the new rules, miners as a group would be capped in their participation in the industrial power saving program, and would also see tax abatements abolished for the industry. Although this has cleared the Senate, it still has a few major hurdles left to go before it becomes law, including what's expected to be a contentious and likely less positive vote in the state's Congress and an uncertain future on the governor's desk. There's actually a couple of more things to talk about here, but let's just kind of jump right into it. Will, why don't you go ahead and get us started from a miner's perspective on this?
Totally. As disclosure, I do run media for a mining company, so I know a little bit about this. And I think the biggest thing to know is this bill is put in place because there's large political pressure around Bitcoin mining right now. We talked about it last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, the New York Times article that sort of contextualized this debate between energy markets and Bitcoin miners and retail consumers, electricity, who are paying more because of inflation, because the cost of energy has gone up. And we're really seeing a debate, right, for the first time. Oftentimes with crypto tokens and everything else out there, you don't necessarily have to interact with it if you don't want to. But Bitcoin mining, because it uses energy, it has a normal place in an everyday person's life, right? If my energy bill went up and I know there's a Bitcoin mining facility nearby, I might put those two things together. So we're going to continue to see this, and that's where you're going to see these bills roll through different state legislatures talking about it. This particular one in Texas, I just don't think really has a chance of going anywhere. The Texas governor has been very, very pro crypto, even welcoming crypto miners back in 2021 when China banned Bitcoin mining. So I think it's going to be vetoed at that end. But will be interesting to see if the rest of the Texas legislature is for or against this, depending on how they view it, right? And that will give you a little bit more understanding of how this is viewed in other state legislatures all across America. Texas might be mostly Republican, but not everyone who is Republican is pro-Bitcoin mining or pro-Bitcoin. And not everyone who is Democratic or Democratic-leaning is pro-Bitcoin or anti-Bitcoin. We're going to see this for the first time, basically what's happening down in Texas. Jen, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, for me, this points out the cycle that I talk about a lot on the show when we talk about Bitcoin and the energy concerns. It's like the government says these things about Bitcoin's energy consumption that are very subjective, and then the mainstream media goes out and tries to find more facts and put together an objective report. But kind of that New York Times piece, I was thinking about how we were like, it would be so good to see a comparison between Bitcoin's energy consumption and the traditional finance world's energy consumption. So some of the comparisons that were made in that New York Times article fell flat for me. I know it fell flat for some of the other people who were on the show that day. And now I read this article and I see that a Texas resident was quoted who organized hundreds of local residents in a group called Concerned Citizens of Navarro County to campaign against riot platforms. And so these people are out there reading this message, forming their own opinions without having that kind of objective information. And so when I see this, it's kind of annoying. Before I pass it off to you, Adam, I have a question because I'm not completely sure on, how the energy supply and grid works. So if this bill were to pass, right, and miners were not able to participate in this program that allows them to turn operations down in times of high energy demand, wouldn't that just incentivize them to continue operations and affect the city and the environment more so than before?
Yeah, so the way that I set up this story leaned into that, which is not really how the article itself is written. But yeah, that's how I read it too. It's that if the goal, one of the things that the bill does is it caps the amount of essentially rewards that as industrial users, Bitcoin miners can earn for turning off their power during high capacity times. And so by capping it at 10%, it means that if miners would have used 25%, but now they're capped at 10%, then there's no reason for them to turn off the incentive kind of drops off there. So it definitely does seem to be more about optics than it seems to be about there being an actual problem here, because it seems like, again, to the extent there's a problem, it's the way that the grid is set up, and it's not really about any particular industrial use. To your other point, though, Jen, that petition I found really, really interesting. And it brought up something for me that I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about and probably warrants a longer conversation than we have time for today. But like when a company builds a factory in a location, then typically it will create jobs in that location, and those jobs typically will go to people who work there because they're the people who are available. So with a Bitcoin mine, that doesn't really seem to be the case, and it does seem to have some negative externalities. And so that was what I saw lots of people in Navarro County kind of talking about and concerned about. That seems valid to me as a reason to not want that type of thing to go there.